Okay, is Brandon here?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, what do you think?
Now that I look at it, I made the dog really big.
I don't
But
mind that. I think you got to bounce a little light in there.
yeah, I accidentally put too much of that filter on, and it's a bit noticeable.
Which
And then
filter?
the
Oh, I see.
oil paint one.
Yeah, but like in here, like especially down maybe towards the ground a little bit, you could probably bounce just a subtle little bit of that light or that green in there, right?
Yeah,
Because
I see
that
it now.
green, when you go out and now, when we've been talking about this, and I know everybody in here is not a painter and all that, but you still might be asked to, if you're a graphic designer or something like that, you still might be asked to doctor. Yeah, actually, you will be to doctor photos, and when you can go a little further like that and really, incorporate things like lighting and everything, it'll really help a lot, right?
Yeah,
And you can use that to your advantage where you go, okay, I'm going to put a green gradient seamless behind this portrait, let's say. Then I'm just going to knock in a little bit of that reflected light in the cheek, and it starts to really become much more believable. And but ideally, whenever you do these kind of things, you don't want anybody to notice what you did. You want them to just buy into that dog's in that environment or whatever, right?
yeah.
So we always want to keep, unless you're like pushing it deliberately or something, that's fine too. Okay. So, and then let's see. I would pull some of this, soften some of that up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is it just like pulling it in with the brush and then kind of?
Yeah. Here, let me find my brush. I have to reset up everything, you guys. Sorry. Let's go. And I don't want anything on it. So I want to go clean brush. I'm going to go with this. And I don't think I want it that wet. Maybe down to here. Let's just try this. Damn it. And I probably would do this with a rougher brush, but I'm just getting this one because I know it should work. And I'm going to pull some of that over that real subtly over the background, just so it doesn't feel too cut out. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you choose the same color that you're trying to blend in, or?
What I'm doing right now is I didn't do it. I'm going to go, yeah, I can do it two ways. Like what I'm doing right now is I don't have any color on the brush. You see that?
Yeah.
So I can pull, and that's too fuzzy. I would never do it that fuzzy. Um, I don't want things to look like I just blurred them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'd probably get a rough brush and sort of break up that edge a little bit, or I might even do it with a smudge brush. But right now we're talking about mixer. Um, or I could go sample all colors here, and it's going to pick up some of that background and mix it in. I can pull it in too. You see that?
Yeah, I see it.
And then we can start to get a little more, a little more integrated into the background. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd probably go load solid color only and maybe pick up some of that. And this I'd probably go on another layer maybe. No, I'll do it on this layer. Let's see how bad that is. Okay, so that's pretty subtle. So that's good. So I might come in here and just bounce a little bit of that green in there. And I'd probably do it mostly on the down facing planes, like his chest is rolling down, right?
Yeah.
And this is a little too much, but I'm just doing it so you can see it. But I do it really subtly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see it. It's just tough trying to find like a good brush for it.
Yeah.
'Cause I think mine's the way I set mine up is a little messy. So just
See, that's
trying to
what I
find a
just
mixer
did. That's a
brush.
little too much. I do it even more subtle than that. But then
Yeah.
I might come in here and just knock some, smooth that out with my mixer brush. I'm doing it with the smudge right now, but and it'll knock it down a little bit, and then I might even, take a little of this up here and just bounce that barely into the up facing things, and it'll sort of put them into that environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see it now.
I like that he feels like he's almost leaning against his tree a little bit.
Yeah, I used a clone stamp, just kind of blend it in a bit.
And then you pulled this up with your mixer brush down by his feet.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That, you know, it's simple as that is, it's shocking how many people don't do it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's something I see all the time, and they do it with drawing, painting, and this kind of thing, where they don't integrate the whatever it is into the environment as it transitions into the ground. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or even this thing with like the fur, you know, pulling a little of the fur over. It's like it's got to be overlapping the background, and a dog doesn't have a hard edge on them, right? They've got a
Yeah.
soft edge. I'll just bounce through some of these that I see I can. Anyway, I like this one. It looks like he incorporated some of the color into it. It feels really natural. Pulled this out over it. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yeah.
Where are you at? You here?
Yep.
Made sense? Looks like it
Mhm.
did.
Yeah, I think I put too much green, maybe.
Yeah, it's a little much, but it's not too bad. All right. You could just kind of pull that down a little bit and you'd be fine.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I first look at it, like from here, it looks pretty integrated. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if you just toned it down a little bit, it'd be fine. Like you might even go back in and go, well, you can do this on another layer if you want, and just put sample all layers and it'll do it, you know, it'll
Yeah.
incorporate the bottom layer, but you can adjust it, which is something I really like. I like all that. And you'll see it in a lot of the tools. We talked about it before. A lot of the tools have a sample all layers function, which allows you to work more non-destructive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Questions?
Not really.
Okay. And I like the way it incorporates into the ground. That looks really natural.
Yeah, I put up like the little leaves or the grass.
Yeah, but it's
It
a
is
nice
fun.
job. I mean, it really sits in that environment. The way it's sitting in the environment's really good. And the reason I like to pick that hyper lit environment is then you can use that light. You know, it really gives you an excuse to bounce the light around. If it was really low level lighting, you probably wouldn't get that as much. You can push it, but still. This one, who's this? Why does it always take everybody?
I think that's mine.
So this dog, that dog's really lit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to darken it a little bit because he's sitting in shadow. And then again, incorporate a little bit of this lighting into it. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Especially down here, because this is sort of a down facing plane and it's really light. I mean, it's starting to go towards white. That's going to accept a lot of color, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Questions?
No.
Because the way you incorporated the fur is pretty good. Like it looks like you broke it up with like a rough brush, which is kind of nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of did.
And that's all mixer brush?
Yes.
Okay, good. My main thing is I just want to make sure you guys know how to use that thing because everybody always has trouble with it, including me when I started it. Oh, you put some dappled light on it. Who is this?
Sorry, I forgot to add my name.
Who is it?
Irene.
I knew it. See what I mean?
Having a rough morning.
What was so rough?
Oh, parents. Parents are rough.
Get rid of them.
I wish. No, I'm just kidding.
I can take care of that for you.
Oh, how much do you cost?
Pretty expensive.
I'll think about it.
All right. And I can do it with malice or without malice.
Options. I like that.
Mm-hmm. All right. So this one's pretty dark, but I think it kind of works. I like the little dappled light. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then did you incorporate a little bit of the green in here? It looks like.
There's a lot of green in there.
Okay, good.
It's yeah, very subtle, but there's
It's
a lot.
sitting in there pretty good. I think I'd add a little more of that. If I was going to make this dapple light statement, I'd add a little more of it.
Okay.
But other than that, What did you do for the dappled light? How'd you do it?
I just took a mixer, like a white mixer brush, and then with like zero mix and just put it on top. And I
Ah,
took a smudge and then I smudged it out a little bit.
yes.
Hmm.
Man, that dappled light thing is something you should really bring into like when you can into your digital paintings and stuff.
Yeah, it makes a difference.
Oh man, it's like, and you can't do it all the time, obviously, but you saw it like when we looked at that Tommy Kim guy stuff.
Hmm.
It's such a nice, like magical little thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it adds a good ambiance and feel to it.
Yeah, and it puts it like in this case, there would be, I mean, there is all over the ground. There's all this dappled light, right?
Hmm.
So if I can get that on there, and you could draw it in, you know, if you're doing a drawing.
Yeah.
But it's just really nice. It's another little, all these things, all I look at them as is a design tool, right?
Hmm.
And it's a really nice design tool. It's a nice lighting design tool.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, I don't see it enough. And also, actually, I'll try and find it if you want. I think I can find some posts on this. If you ever look at dappled light, like look at it in nature,
Hmm.
sometimes it does some really interesting things. Like sometimes it'll go sort of blasted out, sort of yellowish or whatever from the sun, and then it'll go right around the edge. It'll shift color.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
Right. And then it'll shift into whatever's around it, right?
Hmm.
Now it doesn't always do that, but that's also a nice little tool where it might go really orange and then kind of go to a burnt orange and then drop off into, you know, cool or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all those little things, you know, tear them apart and look at them and go, okay, I see what's going on there.
Hmm.
It's sort of like that. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's the same thing as we talk about is that hotter lighting idea, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
But it's sort of going hot to sort of the mid or whatever you want to call it,
To a
and then
cool.
drops off to the cool. you know?
Yeah. Mhm.
And then also look at when you see things like I always use as an example, when you see like hillsides and the sun's going behind the hill, like at dusk or whatever, and it eats up the side of the hill. You've seen that, right?
Mhm.
Where it sort of chews up the side of the hill and it gets very orangey. Like look at that stuff.
Yeah.
And if you can find out, and by the way, James Gurney's blog's a great resource for this kind of stuff.
I love him. Yeah.
He's great. And
Great.
super generous guy, by the way.
Hmm.
He I don't know if you know this, but he also has he actually has a degree in, I think it's anthropology or something, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he's been a dork, by the way, from day one. Okay. Because that's one of the things I like about him is he's such an art nerd. But so he has this sort of science brain, and he went to Art Center for like, I don't know, one term or a year or something, and then he just went out and started his career. But he tends to really look at everything from a science perspective, like why does that happen, right?
Yeah.
And that's really valuable because if you know why it happens, then you can apply it out of your brain to all sorts of different situations, right?
True. Hmm.
So if I know how a dappled light works in different situations, if I know how he put us, this is how nerdy he gets, and which I think is really cool. He put a post up there one time on, have you ever seen it like a tin plate?
Yeah.
Okay. And they get all those scratches in it.
Hmm.
He did a post on how the light specularity lands on that kind of thing.
Oh, that's interesting.
And he explained it. And then there's another thing, which is sort of similar to dappled light. And you see this too, when somebody will have a hat on and half of their head's like in shadow, where, especially in bright light, where the shadow meets the skin tone, there'll be like a little blast of like burnt orange right there, right before it shifts.
Hmm.
Like that kind of stuff. That stuff really, if you know that stuff, and by the way, catalog it. Like when I'm going around the world all the time and I see things like that, I go, why is it doing that? And then I kind of try and figure it out.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
And some of it's just optics and things like that, but they're good things to know the formula for it or how they work, because then you can go, hey, I could use that idea with this stage lighting.
Hmm.
You know, I can use that sun eating the background with the stage lighting, where if I have somebody backlit with powerful stage lighting or something, I can eat up the sides of it and use the same type of idea, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Or I can push it,
Hmm.
which is what I'm always looking to do, actually. Okay, who's this? You have any questions, Irene?
No, I'm good. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, who's this? Isaac, where you at?
Here.
I would soften up these edges a little bit. You see how hard they are?
Yeah.
Is this a PSD? No. And the other thing I do a lot of times with this kind of thing, if I'm taking somebody, I'm just going to do this really crappily. Because see how I can see a little bit of this white fringe?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a couple ways. We talked about it a little bit. I'm just going to take this part. And I would never do a selection like this, by the way. And one of the things I might do to get rid of something, I can't get rid of this. That's too much. Hang on. So let's just get rid of that. When it's just a general shape like this, where, you know, one thing I might do initially, number one, I'd probably use my object selection tool and see how that works. But a lot of times I'll just go select it, go to select, modify, contract. And I can also put a little feather on this if I want and all that stuff. Why did that not give me my, hang on. That's not enough. Oh, here it is over here. And I'm going to go, let's try 5 pixels in. That's too much, but we'll just, and then I go invert and I might soften up that selection a little bit. And I could just kind of get rid of some of it like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then you got to come in here. And this might be another place where I go, because I don't want this all soft now. Like it can't all get soft. But I do want to soften that up a little bit. I don't want it to be that hard edged, right? And and at the same time, I don't want it to all look fuzzy. So I got to like make sure I'm not doing either or. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And like little things like this strap right here, I might pull over a little more so I can wrap it around the background a little more. And I know that's way too fuzzy. You know, anywhere. See, we're still getting a little bit of fringe right there. You can also go here. Where is it? Where is that? Hang on. Matting. I can defringe, remove black matte, remove white matte, and sometimes that'll help you out, right? You there?
Yep.
So we got to integrate the background into the fore, and the dogs is a lot easier because the dog I can just pull a little bit of the fur, break up the fur a little bit. Because right now, look how hard edged that is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you got to soften this up. And a lot of times, again, the way I'm going to come in here is not individual hairs. I'm going to get a rough brush, just kind of hit it and break up that edge a little bit. And then here and there, I'll pull a hair or two. Yeah.
Mhm.
You got questions?
Overall, no, but
Like here, you got to, this is just cut out this ground. It would be sinking in there a little bit. Same thing with the dog. You see that? Yeah.
yeah.
But you know how to do it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your major?
Graphic design.
You're going to get some things like that you're going to have to, you know, even if it's graphic design, because graphic designers, man, they're manipulating photographs all the time. Who's this? Oh, Jessica, where you at?
Hello.
That's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting. I think I would start all over again if I didn't.
You know what though? Did you hyper up the background?
No, it was really saturated. I actually brought it down a little bit.
Well, I know, but here's the thing. It's like when you put the dog into such a saturated environment that looks sort of fantasy, like pushing a little further made sense.
Okay, cool.
So, I mean, it's sort of a weird um, hyper saturated background. It feels very fantasy.
Yeah.
Right? So I think you've got free reign to go a little crazier like you did.
Okay, cool.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the only thing that I was like, how do I don't know why, the feeling of him being like planted on the floor was like a little hard. Like I was having difficulty with that.
Usually what I'm doing is I'm just pulling a little bit of that ground up over it. And like in this case, that doesn't feel like a super soft ground,
Yeah,
but I might cheat it just a hair. Does that make sense?
yeah.
You have to learn from a design. What's your major?
Illustration.
Okay. You have to learn, especially from an illustration perspective. Sometimes you got to push things a little bit to make them look correct. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's the same thing you're doing. Like if you go, and this is why I think plein air painting is so important for illustrators. When you go out into an environment, the mistake a lot of people make when they first start going out in plein air painting, and the reason plein air painting is so important is because you're going out there and looking at an unfiltered environment, right? It's not
Yeah.
filtered by photography, blah, blah, blah. It's right there in front of you, right? And the mistake most people make is they go, okay, I'm trying to copy this. Exactly. And it's like, well, okay. Number one, you've got to make editing decisions. You've got to simplify. And then another thing you got to do is you go, I got to push that blue a little bit. I got to push this temperature a little bit to actually make it look more like what it looks like. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're always making those decisions, even if you're doing something quote unquote realistic. If you look at a really great plein air painting, there's so much truth in it. Like you'll look at it and go, I see this all the time, and I'll go, oh my God, they just nailed that light right there. And I never thought of it like that. But man, it just puts me right in that vibe of being in the desert, late afternoon, because they pushed a couple of things a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So, you got to learn how all that, works realistically and all that. But when you're going on location or whatever, you're pushing and pulling and reducing and simplifying and all those things. And it's the same thing here. Right. So I think the decision to go a little hyper color on the dog makes sense.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Because if
Yeah.
you put that dog into just totally normal lighting, it doesn't make sense in this sort of fantastic lighting.
Yeah.
Right. Which also is a really simple equation here, where they probably first thing they did is they went to Command U and saturated this, just juiced it. And then you could even go like right here on this. I might take the sponge brush, put it on saturate, and dial in how much of that I want. And I might just hit certain spots like that and light these up and maybe lighten that up. And I can focus in and hyper saturate just where the light's bouncing. Right?
Yeah.
And I got to set all that up before I put my dog in it, just like you did. And then I go, okay, now the dog's got to make sense in this environment too. So I got to get a little more fantastic with it. Right?
Yeah.
What kind of illustration you want to do? I know I probably asked this, but
Yeah. I feel like I never have a straight answer either. I
Okay.
just like any excuse to draw and paint and stuff like that.
yeah, that's the old generation thinking.
Yeah.
Good. Used to go, oh, I love drawing, blah, 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 blah. I just want to find someplace I can draw for a living. You know what I mean? Like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. There's an opportunity, there's an opportunity, whereas I feel like now people get much more. I feel like a lot of people come at it more from video games and things like that,
Yeah.
which I think that's weird thinking to me. I don't understand that. I understand wanting to do video games and all that, but I don't understand like sort of going from I like playing video games to I want to be a concept artist, and there was never any art thing in between those two thoughts.
Yeah. I think
that make sense?
yeah, I get that. I think it's just the amount of time that people put into it. You kind of like,
I know, but it's weird to me that you don't go, okay, you want to be in the video game industry, you're going to choose that, and you've never had any artistic inclination.
okay, I get what you're
And
saying.
you're going to go and jump to, I want to be a concept artist in the video game industry. It's like, do you know the level of skill you got to have to do that?
Yeah.
And you're competing with people who their brain is like, I love design, I love illustration, I love blah, 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 and I like playing and I like video games. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a weird concept to me. It's like, it seems like you'd be more like, well, maybe I can get into the business end of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or maybe I can get into project management, or maybe I can get in, that part of it, as opposed to going like, I'm going to try and make that leap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then what tends to happen with that, and not always, but what tends to happen with that is that they're not really all that passionate about art. And I'd argue the only way you're going to get good at this is to be crazy into it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I get that.
Where your brain's just always on it. If I wake up in the middle of the night, my brain's thinking about this. You know what I mean? When I go to bed, my brain's thinking about it. When I get up in the morning, the first thing I'm thinking about, like today, I woke up this morning, I go, oh, I want to go in and play around with that painting I got in my sketchbook. And it gets me all excited to get up, you know?
Yeah.
It might sound sad to some people.
No.
Okay, who's this one?
That's mine.
I like that.
Yeah, I thought it was cute.
Doesn't look like you had any problems with it.
Yeah, I pulled out the fur a lot since he's
Yeah.
like a lot closer. So
Now, the only thing I might do is like, and by the way, this being backlit so hard, you might get that kind of fringy, furry look like that. So I was just going to say I would do this, that, and the other, but you might get that because it's really going to hyper show that fur, right?
yeah, I was thinking about that too.
And then you got some of this like bounced in here. What's your major again? I know your major.
Illustration.
Yeah. And you want to do what? I know I ask this all the time, but
Same as Jess, I'll just do anything, but I do also like biz dev and pre-production stuff.
okay, good. So this kind of thing is great for Viz Dev. Does that make sense? Because man, but you better understand lighting if you're going to go into Viz Dev, yeah?
Yeah.
And then I also like that this little under bounce light right there. See, that was a good choice right there to go. I'm going to push the green a little harder right there because it's super down facing. It's almost white, right?
Yes.
And again, you're sort of pushing it enough where it feels good. And that's a little bit here. But that's really nice, man. And you got a little green up here, which also makes sense because all this green is pouring down from up there too, right? It's a nice job, man.
Thanks.
You know what I might have done is just bounced a little bit into the bottom of his nose, or maybe even the top.
Yeah.
Or I might have pulled some of this sky value right there. Just a hair, because their nose is always wet.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which means I'm going to get a little bit of reflectivity in there. Man, that'll just pop that in there. And it's got to be really subtle. You know what I mean? All right. Any questions?
Nope.
Have you already taken digital painting?
No, I haven't yet. This is actually my
good.
first time learning Photoshop.
Oh, good. You feeling confident with it?
Yeah, I really like it. It's getting easier as I'm learning all the things that.
Yeah. So I'm trying to set you up with good base knowledge. I'm trying to set you up with what you're going to need to go into the other classes. And then when you take digital, who are you going to take digital painting with?
I don't know because I'm transferring. So.
Oh, okay. Where are you transferring?
Cal State Northridge.
Oh, good. Or did you already do it?
Yeah, I'm like officially registered now.
Yeah.
Yay! Yeah.
I heard they have a pretty good program.
Yeah, I was researching. That's what I talked to you about a couple of times. So.
And are you the one talk to Allison or no?
Yes. I talked to her multiple times. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I said this before. I worked with a lot of people from there.
Yeah, that's good to know.
And you know where I really noticed it was Imagineering.
Oh, cool! That's awesome.
That's why it's always stuck in my head because I remember going, wow, a lot of people from Cal State Northridge here, and they're Imagineering, which is top of the heap. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, find out if there's a connection there. Find out, you know, when you get to some point where you start, you know, maybe getting, 6 months to graduation, start looking up the alumni and see where they've all worked and contact them.
Yeah, I will.
If nothing else, just for advice, just like, hey man, how'd you do it?
Mm-hmm.
All right, who's this?
That would be me.
What do you think?
The more I look at it, the more I realize I had a little bit of issue balancing the light into the front of the dog.
It's not too bad. The thing I'd say is like soften up these feet down here, and then I'd soften up this a little bit. Now, the nice thing here is you could soften that up and it's dark and it's sort of going into a dark. So that can kind of just get softened a little bit, right? And then you pulled some of this out. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I might bounce a little bit of more green in there and soften this up and make sure we're not getting any of that fringe right there. See that?
Yeah, I see that now.
And then like I would just grab some of the, I'll do the,
The tufts over here and pull them out a little bit more.
yeah, I'd pull probably some of this grounds color into the fur right here to break it up. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because sometimes you're pulling it over it, and then sometimes I might pull a little when you do that sample all layers thing where I can mix the background into the edge, right?
Yep.
And I do a combination of both. Which and this technique basically is just emulating wet into wet oil painting, right?
Mhm.
That's how I look at it anyway. I think, I mean, there's a million ways to do digital painting, but you really need, the mixer brush will really give you that painterly look. Okay, who's this? Samantha. Now this is a crazy lit, colorful environment. I think you could go a little crazier with the color bouncing around, yeah?
Okay, yeah.
Did you have any problems with the mixer brush?
No, not really.
And then here, we got to get rid of that white right there. And
Yeah, I
here.
was trying and for some reason it was not letting me because I cloned a little bit,
Uh-huh,
like where the flowers are at.
yeah.
But I was trying to cut that out and it didn't let me.
What I would do, now I can't get too close on it, but I'd probably just, because it's such a low res pick. Hang on.
Yeah.
I'd probably go here. And then I can't eliminate it because this isn't a PSD, right? Yeah. So then I'd probably just take this color, pop it in there. And then I'd go in here and just kind of
Oh,
paint
okay.
out that little bit of white.
Yeah, the one.
Or I could just come in here.
I didn't think of that, to be honest.
It's always like, that's the point, is that it's always about finding, what is it? Oh, I'm on the mixer brush. Let's go to a regular brush. It's always about finding the right solution for the right problem. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
And this
smart.
is so small, I'm never going to see it. So I can probably do something like that.
It makes a
Oh.
difference though when you zoom out.
Oh yeah, it makes a huge difference. Like there's no, okay, so let me, I probably said this. I can't tell you how many times you look at a portfolio and somebody's got a bunch of bad Photoshop crap in there that they don't think anybody's going to notice. And literally people will call you over and go, hey dude, look at this person's portfolio. And everybody's sitting there goofing on it. Like, look at all the fringe on there. Look how they cut that out all hard at. It's like, you're not going to get a job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to understand all that stuff. And you got to know, and this just happens through time. You got to start, your eyes will get more and more sophisticated. You're probably already seeing this. You go and you look at work you did a year ago and you go, oh my God. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that looks way better.
And you're using a really low res image. So I can't get in there and really get it perfect. So I can get it pretty loosely, and then I might come in with my smudge brush or my mixer brush or whatever, maybe soften an edge or pull a color into if it needs it. This is a little more of a harder edge thing. Now you got some of the bounce light in here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I would go a little harder on it because this also feels a little bit pushed and saturated. Yeah.
Yeah. I just thought like where his back is, he's kind of in a shadow there. So I try to just implement it on his face.
Well, the main light is coming from over here.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing, I might do if this was a selection, let's say this was, because this guy's on his own layer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would just select him from the layer, but then I'd probably come in here and I'd probably go, I'm doing this really half-ass. I'm just going to do it like this. I would do this much more carefully. And I'd really figure out where my light was. And I'd find the right color. I'm just going to do this for speed. And I might give it a little more of a shadow value on the other side,
Yeah.
right? Because that light is over to the left.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can dial this in. I can go, is that dark enough? And then I got to go, this edge shouldn't be so sharp. So I'd probably soften up that edge a little. And see how it starts to put him into this environment a little more?
Yeah.
Now, if I wanted to push this, let's go back to, what do I have? Yeah. You know, and again, it's kind of a hyper environment. I don't want it that much. Let's try that. Oh, there's the problem. I might start adding a little bit of that lit
Light.
side into there. And I'm doing it pretty ham-fisted. I'd be much more careful with it.
Yeah, I added a little bit, but I was more focused on the purple.
Oops. And this is way too fuzzy, but you know,
Yeah, that looks good.
but see how you get them a little bit of light, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then this down here, it's bound. Yeah, I could bounce some sunlight in there, but it feels like there should be a little bit of this in there. I'm not getting enough of it. Hang on. So I'm going to drop that. I'm going to drop the mix. Let's see. Got to put another layer here. Yeah. I want it lighter though. You know, and I pop in some of this, a little bit of this violet in there, not too much. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, see how it just cooled down that warm right there?
Yeah.
I don't know why it's going so dark. Hang on. Anyway, I mix it up. So I just got a little bit of this other light in here. Because it feels like it needs that. For some reason, it's going onto that background.
Yeah, it's
Hang
going
on.
real dark.
I don't know why it's doing that.
Now it's in green. Green.
I'm going to try it right on this layer. Yeah, I have to figure it out here. Let's try the mix. There's a little more because I actually do want it to be really. Oh, that's why. To be really subtle as I build it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is another thing I like about the mixer brush. I can dial it down. So I'm going in and it's sort of mixing in with the color that's already there and it's really subtle and I build it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What people tend to do is they go too fast to something super saturated or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this color is going to be bouncing into this color. So it's not going to be crazy. Questions?
Good. No.
That all makes sense?
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
Let's see. Two more here. Where's Tang at?
Hey, Professor.
How you doing?
Good.
It all makes sense?
Yes, sir. I think I could do a little bit better job with the fur, but
it all makes sense how it works, right?
yeah.
And then, you know, I'd pull a little more up over his paws down here.
Yeah.
And you did it a little more back here. That really, you know, and then this feels like it needs to get pulled out a little. So you know kind of what it is, right?
Yeah.
And you pulled some of the color in there?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, what you always got to learn to do is look at that and go, it doesn't feel believable sitting in that environment. Right?
Yeah.
Who's this? Jordan, where you at?
That's me.
What do you think?
Yeah, actually, I had a question. I was wondering what direction you would use the mixer brush in, or is it just like all directions?
What do you mean direction?
Because I mean, I was kind of at some points going around the dog. I was what do you call it? I was just going like literally following the outline, But I was thinking maybe it would look better if I go from the background into the dog or from the dog into the background. Like as far as the strokes.
So you're talking about managing the edges, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And how to sort of manage the silhouette of it. Is that what you're saying?
Kind of. I'm kind of treating I want to treat this as if it were like a real paint, and real canvas.
Okay. The way I would do that, in the foreground here, see how it's getting a little bit fuzzy?
Yeah. Yeah.
I would come back in here. Now, the way I would usually hit this kind of thing is I wouldn't go in with an individual brush first. I'd go in with like a rough brush and I'd sort of break up that edge a little bit. Does that make sense?
Okay.
In the foreground. So we're talking about right here, right?
Yeah.
And right here and inside of his head and all that. And then this dog has short hair. So I might just pull a couple out very subtly and just go, okay, that's enough, right? Because what I don't want it to start looking, I don't want it to start looking uniform. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Honestly, I kind of, this was a painting,
Yeah. And then back here, I'd go a little softer like you're starting to do. So what happens is it's starting to go back and soften up that back edge a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So then in the foreground, I'm giving you a little more fur information, not a lot, because I don't want to overdo that because he's still far enough away where I'm not going to see a lot of that. But I'm giving you a little more information on the front of the dog, and then I'm softening the back a little bit.
Okay.
I might then go sample all layers and pull a little of that background into it just subtly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was kind of tricky getting the shading for the bush right next to the dog.
Yeah. And then you got to really go again. One thing that would help this, because it looks like the light. I mean, I could say, yeah, it's coming from up here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I might come in here when I have the dog on its own layer, which do I? Oh, I do. So then I can just select it. Oh, that's a wide selection. Let's try that. Okay, so I'm going to just go. And again, I would do a good selection. I'm going to do a really lousy one. And I would go, that is a very directional light. Actually, I'm going to do it like this because there's still light overhead. So I'm going to say, and I have to figure this out, but I'm just going to kind of make it up real quick. This left part of his leg would get a bunch of bounce light on that side. So would some of that. Then it would come down here probably.
Yeah, I hit the right side with a little bit of green, but it's barely noticeable, if any.
You got it. Well, it's better to build it up from barely noticeable to something. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm going to use a gray. I wouldn't necessarily use a gray for this, but I'm just doing it for speed. And then I'm going to pull it again, because at least that way I'll get a soft edge on one side. Yeah, let's just try that. And then I'm going to break that up. Now I'd break it up also. Let's do this. I don't like that. Let's try this. So I want to soften this up. I'm probably going to soften it up too much, but and I might even use some of, let's try this. I don't know if this will work. So I'm going to pull in a little of that same purpley shadow value there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I did is I just threw it down as a gray, and then I just went to my, and then I picked that value or that color, right? Went up to my hue saturation and click colorize, and it shifts it to that value or that color, right?
Yeah.
And you can see that puts them a little more in that environment. See it?
Yeah.
Because these shadows are super cool. So if I'm making a statement of, putting something into this environment, I've got to follow that really hard, that statement it's making, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to look pretty good.
Yeah, and I haven't hardly done anything, right?
The shadow also of the dog was kind of tricky because that shadow on the ground wasn't there before.
Oh, okay. And another thing is that this dog might get, let's see if I can, I don't know, my mixer brush doesn't want to cooperate. Hang on. It looks like you did put some of the light in there.
Yeah, kind of, a tiny bit.
I've got something on overlay or something. I'm trying to figure out where it is. Let's try dry heavy load. Yeah, that's better. So I set it to dry heavy load. For some reason that usually works. Now there's just a little too much. I'm going to go a little wetter. Yeah. It's too much. So I got to dial in this light. And that's really subtle. You can barely see it, but that's how I want to build it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I want to build it up really subtly so I don't get all ham-fisted with it. So it's really barely there right now. Now it's going darker again. There's something on overlay here and I don't know where it is. Let's try a little more mix. Yeah, it's picking it up just barely, which is what I want. And I just would subtly pull this up because there's going to be, this is a really lit environment, right? Does that make sense? Where'd you go? I lost you. There it goes. Where'd you go, Jordan? We've lost Jordan. Jordan. You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where'd you go, Jordan?
Sorry, my audio wasn't working for a second.
All right. Do you see how it's starting to warm him up a little bit on the bottom?
Yeah, for sure.
And all this is starting to put him a little more in that light. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, he's looking much more like he's in that light now. And what was the two main things? We bounced a little bit of, this is a very lit environment. And here's another thing. This has a very clear color statement, right?
Yeah.
Which is that purpley shadow and that very yellowy warm light, right? So you're just like, boom, I got these two very defined things to light this dog. And I hardly did anything to it. And it's starting to look much more like it's in that environment, right?
The simpler the lighting, I guess the better it's gonna look. Or what do you mean by that?
This is a painting. Okay, it's not a photograph. So the artist is making, those kind of color choices and things like that. He's making those choices. Okay. When you're taking a photograph, now I'm not saying that photographers don't make choices about the light, they do, but they're capturing something. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now they might go in and manipulate it and tweak it, because they do, and do a lot of things to the lighting. It's probably going to be a little more subtler and hard to find, or less defined when you look at it. Whereas this is super defined. It's cool and warm. It's yellow and purple. Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So now I've got and you can do that with a photograph too. You got to analyze the light. You got to analyze the light. You got to analyze the ambient bounce light. You got to analyze all those things and go, okay, And this is a good example of this, okay? Because here you're looking at it, you're going, okay, very yellow, warm light, very cool, purpley shadows, right? You can kind of do that with a photograph, even though it's more complex. You're just going to go like those forest scenes with all that green. You go, this is hyper saturated green. This stuff's going to bounce all over the place. There's trees overhead. Look, there's dappled light on the ground. I can put dappled light on my subject, put my subject in the shadow, put some dappled light on it. Okay, now the ground is very hot, acidic green. It's going to bounce a little bit up into the down facing planes. Then I'm going to look up at the sky and go, just like we were talking about that dog, that nose is wet. It's going to get a little bit of reflection on it. And I'm going to maybe go with the top and just put a subtle cool that's capturing, it could be the green in the environment, but I might want to get a different color in there and go, I'm going to say it's bouncing a little bit of that cool light from the sky into it. And maybe I might just subtly put a little more of that green bounce light in the bottom of the nose. It's a wet surface, right?
Right.
So does that make sense how I'm analyzing it?
Yeah, it's definitely.
And I'm glad you used this because this really simplifies that idea, and we can see really quickly how fast you can make that dog look more in the environment, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so everything makes sense, right?
Yeah, no, for sure it does. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm just going to go, let's go up here to window. We're going to go to actions. This is going to bring up this window, okay? And I'm going to go fly out menu. Actually, I'm going to go fly out menu, new set. Gosh darn it, always goes over the other window. I'm going to call this test. And hit OK. Oops. And then new action. Hopefully I got this right. And record. You see that? Yeah?
We see it.
I hit record. The little light's on. And I'm going to go do my thing like I've done before. Let's go here. Let's go here. Let's light them up. Let's go. Let's light them there. I'm going to go to a cool idea here. And let's go to a cooler idea. And sort of desaturated. Find an overlay here. That's not bad. I'm going to go in here. Let's see if I can do this. Trying to find a decent typeface. Oh, it's not in here. Let's go. Yeah, that's fine. And I'm going to go, that's what I did. I'm going to go stop right here. Okay, I'm going to save this file. I don't need to save it, but who cares? And now I'm going to go open up a different file. And I'm going to go and I hit play and it applied all that same stuff to the next image. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, this is good for a whole bunch of things, okay? And as you guys probably know by now, I like to relate it to multiple things. And one of the things is this kind of thing, where maybe you have maybe this is a stylistic point of view for a layout, maybe without the word test or whatever in it. But I have a bunch of black and white portraits and they go, hey, we want to light them, and you come up with the lighting scheme and you go, hey, I want to light them like this, all of them, Then you come up with this and you just go to them and go bing, 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 and they're all the same. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And you got to experiment with this quite a bit and see what you can do with it. Like you can crop, you can do all kinds of things. Now, if I was doing conceptual design or something like that, maybe I'm doing an environment and the environment is a smoky battleground or something, right? And the sky's like yellow, like a weird yellow, and the ground is this and that. And I set up a very basic lighting format and they go, and I pitch one and I go, here's kind of what I'm thinking. They go, yeah, it's cool. Do a scene from over here and it's all in the same environment. Then I might, just as a starting point, create an action and go bing, and all my lighting is set up kind of the same way in the different viewpoints in the same environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it could be a nice starting point. I mean, there's a bunch of things you can do with it, okay? And it's totally simple. I mean, it's just like recording something. You hit record, it records all your actions, and then you hit stop, right? Now for some reason, I have more, what do you call it? Success with this when I do it the way I just did it. I mean, the controls are also down here. You can see them right here, right? But I just have more success with it when I do it from the fly out menu. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You can try it both ways. Questions?
No, I think I got it.
Like Jordan, there's a lot of things that'd be good for you with this. It might just be a stylistic thing, right?
I think maybe for presentation boards, so I can go through a bunch of different layouts.
Yeah. And it could just be like a graphic solution. You might just go, everything's going to fade out on the bottom and have this type or something, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And let's see. Yeah. So what's cool about it is I have everything separated the same way. So if I go, okay, I'm going to have this word down at the bottom on all my boards, with this graphic solution or whatever, then I can just apply it. And then I could just come in here and just change the word and I'm done, right?
Yeah.
So presentation wise, it'd actually be really helpful. And you could create like a little graphic or whatever. Or like this, lighting thing or a fade from the bottom or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or in this case, lighting, right? So I want you guys to pick two different things, just like I just did, and apply actions to that thing. Does that make sense?
Okay.
I'm going to put this up as quick as I can. I'm going to try. I should have enough time to edit this before, because yesterday I had to spend the whole day from probably 11 to 10, just catching up on all my classes. So I want to make sure I'm staying ahead again. So I'm going to try. This should be an easy thing to edit. And I should have enough time between this class and my next class. So I'll try and get this up really quick so you know the process. Yeah?
Sounds good.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me make sure that I got, yeah, I do. Okay. Okay, no questions, right?
Nope.
Not about this, but I was hoping to talk to you after class.
Okay. I'll let you guys go and I want to talk to Jordan. Yeah?
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, you guys.
Bye.
Hi, Mike.
See you later. Okay, Jordan, what's up?
I was going to ask you, did you have a chance to see the presentation board? I finally finished it.
I did see that. It was in our thing, right?
Yeah. Would you? I wanted to ask, what you think about the layout, or I want to see from a non-architectural point of view. Like, is it easy to understand? Like from a design view, does it flow?
I saw it this morning, but I'm not seeing it in here. Hang on. Oh, here it is. Okay, yeah, I do. How'd your presentation go?
Oh, it went well. It went well. The professor was really happy about it. You know, and I was too. So
Good.
I'm glad with it.
I don't know, dude. This looks pretty nice.
Thank you.
This looks really nice, man. Okay, so we got our top elevation view, right?
Right, the site plan, exactly where it sits on the property.
Yeah. Then I've got cutaway view, right?
Oh, that's the interior.
Yep. That's pretty clear. Would you do these in SketchUp?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
I gotta learn SketchUp, man. I've been saying that for years. I think that's a cool program.
It's super easy to pick up on. It's pretty fun.
Where'd you get the tree at?
That's actually an extension. I mean, it's called Warehouse. So I download.
Oh,
have
yeah.
a bunch of people made them, you know, and I download them in.
Yeah. That looks good.
I was planning on entering it to the art competition, you know, for the, I think there's 3 categories. I was wanting to enter for one of them.
Yeah, man.
I was just wondering, you know, if there's any touch-ups I can do, you know, or design-wise, you know.
I don't know.
what
I
works.
think it looks pretty damn good, man.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it looks really good. I don't really have a lot of comments on it. I mean, it's all super readable and clear. It also, you know, it's interesting because these were all done in SketchUp, right?
Yeah.
And some nice textures on it. Doesn't feel like all sterile. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we were going for, you know, when we first talked in the beginning.
And is that what the class was going for? Or is that what you were going for?
That's what I was going for.
Okay, good.
Yeah, as in me and you know, like when we spoke in the beginning of the semester.
Are you seeing a difference in what other people are presenting, what you're presenting?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, I really do, you know, and I think a lot of that, it gives Photoshop has given me a lot more freedom.
Yes.
You know?
And also all this stuff we're talking about light and all that stuff, you know, at certain points, that's going to come into play too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because now I think these are very clear and they're readable. So sometimes, and that's the other thing, you got to know when to use those things and when to go, okay, it's fine. Because sometimes what people will do, man, I see this all the time. They'll just go, they start using things to sort of show off everything they know and not using it when it's appropriate. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
So, you know, they're like, oh, I just learned all this lighting stuff in Photoshop, man, cool. And they just start throwing everything in everything. And you're like, this isn't the place for it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
look at this. This is from another class and it's a different thing. I get it. Because it's a vector thing, but I still think it's really cool. Hang on. No, that's not it. Come on. Yeah, here it is. It's more of a graphic statement, but it's going to open at some point. But it's making a very much a color statement, right?
Yeah, I saw that when you were opening other documents. Somebody else made that, huh?
This is from Vector.
Okay.
This is Ray Gotti. He's a really good student. But we talked a lot about getting the feel. This is Hillcrest Park, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, it looks familiar.
Yeah. And one of the things I kept pushing him on is I go, you got to give me that. I go, look, Hillcrest Park is a cool park, right?
Yep.
I go, and man, when I go by there, because I usually keep a bike in my office and I'll just go riding around. And one of the places I like to go ride to is Hillcrest Park. And one of the reasons I like it is like throughout the day, and especially towards the end of the day, it gets really beautiful, warm light, right?
Okay.
So I kept pushing him to hit that. And then it's also like, okay, that green of the grass needs to get a little more acidic because that light's hitting it. And we just talked a lot about getting that feel of light, because if you're going to do a poster for that particular place, I think it not only needs to talk about, you know, the structure itself, obviously, but it needs to speak to the light and all that kind of thing. So it feels like Hillcrest Park, right?
Right.
And then I can use those kind of things where, you know, if I did a rendering or something, a side rendering where it's like I'm taking it out of elevation, I'm taking all that stuff, and I'm just giving you a beauty shot, right? Like
Right.
here's a beauty shot, here's a vibe shot. Like here's my elevation, here's this, here's that, and then here's my rendering. I'm gonna like that rendering, man, where it's like I want to be there. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's the focus. You know, that's where your eyes should go.
Yeah, and you also want to put people there. Like this makes me go, where is this? I want to go there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think, and we've talked about this. I just saw one. I meant to save it for you. They were showing a bunch of renderings for something in LA. Actually, there's one that's I think it's a Geary thing. I can't remember, but it's somebody who runs this Twitter feed called Vintage LA, right?
Okay.
And so, okay, so she has a very much a point of view about all that. And then there's some development that's going in somewhere in LA, I forgot where, and she clearly hates it, right? But she was showing a picture of it, and I kind of get what she's saying, because they're probably tearing down something historic to build this thing, and it looks really generic. You know what I mean? And the rendering like just has no feeling to it. It just makes me go, okay, that just looks like a mall or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if I was doing that, the first thing I'd come into, if I was directing that or whatever, I would go, man, you got to like that thing. It's got to feel warm and inviting, and it doesn't. You know what I mean? How am I going to sell people on this?
I think it's part of the reason for that is the program, because like some of the programs that I don't really use, Revit, they're a lot more technical, and then the 3D modeling is a lot more realistic, you know, and it comes with its own lighting. So I think people just use that as the final.
But what I'm seeing with a lot of architectural renderings now is I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing them getting really sterile and really clinical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, come on, man, you gotta put some vibe into this stuff. You know, and there was more of that when people were doing it by hand, because a lot of the people who rendered those things, that's all they did. They were architectural renderers, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And they had some sort of point of view a little bit. And they did put, I remember seeing all this stuff when I was over to Imagineering where, you know, when we were doing renderings of different things, man, we were thinking about all that stuff because we got to sell this stuff to Michael Eisner and all these people up at the top. And if it's not, and I think I've said this, we failed on one of those and we lost $7 million off the project. And my boss was bitching about it. And I go, it's our fault, man. I go, look at the, I go, we didn't make it exciting enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're presenting half the time, probably, especially in architecture. Once you take that out of the environment of the architectural firm you work for or whatever, who are a bunch of other creative thinkers and all that kind of thing, and you take it into the person or the people you're going to present it to, they're probably money people. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yeah.
And they're not creatives. So you better understand their and this is a good example of this. I had this woman I worked with, and she did all the Disney product. It was all apparel stuff, right? For it was one of our accounts at this company, right? We did stuff for Mattel, we did stuff for Disney, blah, blah, blah. And she was number one, she was a horrible person, but beyond that, she had no clue what she was doing. And it taught me a really good lesson, because sometimes I'd rip stuff out of fashion magazines or something, just as, you know, like style boards. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And she, hang on, let me turn this off. Hang on. She would, anyway, so I remember one time I brought in this really nice fashion shot of this chrome. It was a belt buckle. I don't know why I brought it in. It wasn't to do a chrome belt buckle, but it was an example for something. And you know how chrome, when it's shot like all clean and lit, it's basically a series of light and dark shapes, right?
Yeah.
I showed her that, and for whatever reason, I don't remember why. And I go, hey man, I'm thinking blah, 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 because I was creative director there. And she goes, she's looking at the picture and she goes, how come it's light right there and then dark right there and then it's light right there? And it taught me she didn't see the whole image pulled together. She saw it all broken apart. Like she was that non-visual. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like one of those things like from a coloring book, you know, where they tell you have numbers and sections. And
yeah,
like this year,
exactly.
You know,
but she saw it like as an abstract thing, and it really taught me a lesson in that moment. I was like, oh my God, she doesn't she can't even visually put these things together, which means there's no way she's going to understand what I'm trying to tell her. You know what I mean?
Do you think people that are not creative will still, if it's a good product, do you think they'll understand lighting?
No, but it's not about them consciously going, wow, that lighting's really nice. It's about being warm and inviting and someplace that you want to see built and be there. Does that make sense?
That's what you're saying. That's what light does, right? That's what the proper lighting does.
It's subconscious. Okay. Like when I see stuff that's cold and sterile, I'm not into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
I just kind of go, I don't like cold and sterile. I always say my whole life's a seeking of warmth. I like warmth. You know what I mean? I like friendly, warm, beautiful lighting, you know, an inviting space, an inviting restaurant interior. I don't want to go in like, okay, I'll give you a perfect example. There is a restaurant that used to be over on the at the Village here, which is right on the water, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So now a new group of people bought that space and revamped it all. Okay. So we go, hey, let's go try this new place. And they think they decorated it all cool. You know, it's got like a little bit of an aquatic thing because it's right on the water and everybody has their boats and they can come up and eat or whatever. I went into that place and let's put aside how bad the service was. Okay, let's just forget that. I walked in and I go, everything's white. And I know they think it looks very decorated and it kind of does, but not really. I mean, you know, not to the extent it should be. Okay, so everything's white and I'm going, why is there not some warm accent color in here, right?
Yeah.
And then the environment is, they didn't think about, and this is something you should think about. I mean, I don't know if it comes into architecture. I'm assuming it kind of does. And I've seen this over and over again. When you come in there, they never thought about any soft surfaces, right?
Like, what do you mean soft surfaces, like wood or?
No, soft surfaces that are absorbent. The place sounded like a cafeteria in a bathroom, like in a tiled bathroom.
Oh,
so
that's very tricky.
Every like you hear nothing but like ching ching, like silverware, and then they put a bar in the middle of this place, right?
Okay.
And 3 TV screens. Now here's an environment that bounces sound all over the place in a way that's really ugly. Okay. Now you got a bunch of guys sitting there looking at sports, and every 5 minutes you hear, ah, because somebody made a touchdown or something, and it just echoes through the whole place, right?
Yeah.
That to me is a very cold, ugly environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, honestly, that's a lot of things that architects might neglect, you know, because you're programming in not a real scenario, you know. And
yes, and what you got to think about is the same thing we're talking about with all this stuff. When I'm going, now some of the reason I know that stuff, it's partly just because I hyperthink on it. But like when we were making the I think it was Ursula's Grotto over at California Adventure. I think that's what it was, right? My boss came to me and he goes, we got to put a carpet in here. And for some reason, I think maybe there was a floor in there I liked that maybe I designed or something. I don't remember. But I go, why do we need carpet? And he goes, sound. He goes, this place is all hard edges, man. It's going to sound awful. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it always stuck in my brain, like those things that you don't think about. And one of the things you might want to look at is looking at things from that point of view, like maybe look at theme park designers and things like that, because they think on a hyper level of a lot of things that might pull into what you do too, right?
Okay. I'll look into that.
Go ahead. What?
No, I was just saying I'll look into that. I hadn't thought about that.
What I'm thinking, what I'm talking about is like, you want to make sure that you're going above and beyond. Like, you don't want to be one of those people. And I don't think you are, because you're thinking about all this stuff and you're commenting on it and all that kind of thing. And I think you're doing all this stuff to try and pull it into what you're doing, obviously. But don't be a pat. Like a lot of people go to school, you know, and they go, okay, this is architecture, this is what we do. Da, 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 da. And they just sort of follow the rules. And you go, well, there's a whole bunch of stuff that none of these people are thinking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of them I noticed, and there's another place up here to open up. It's a cool place called the Tap Room. Same thing. No soft surfaces. Everything's loud. It's echoey. It sounds like a cafeteria. It screws up the ambiance. If you're trying to create an ambiance in a restaurant, and because everything's bouncing around sound wise, all I'm hearing is silverware and all this kind of crap. It makes, forget ambiance now. Now I'm in a cafeteria, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that like you're always controlling the sound in your environments. I'm just saying think further, like think human, think things that make me want to go there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing in a presentation. Because if I'm looking at a presentation, sterile, images and all that kind of stuff, then all of a sudden there's one sitting there that's warm, inviting, and it's a great design. Which one am I going to gravitate towards subconsciously? That one, right?
Exactly.
I just think those are subtle things that I think a lot of people, and they do it in every field, not just architecture. They kind of don't think about more. You know what I mean? Like think about more. Think about like when I go and you're probably seeing a lot of presentations. When you see those presentations, analyze them and go to any presentation you can for that kind of thing and go, what doesn't work here? Or what does work here? Right?
Yeah.
You got to think deeper than just how everybody else thinks, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thanks for the advice. You know, I really think I'm gonna work on it just a little bit more, and then I'm gonna submit it to the program. You know, I mean to the competition. We'll see how it goes.
I think it's impressive.
Thank you. Hey, thank you again for your help. All right.
Okay. I'll let you go.
Yeah. See you on Wednesday. I'll take care.
All right, man. All right.